Good evening and welcome. Tonight we will be going over the history and geography of Bamyan in Afghanistan. I know there's a lot of Afghanistan content lately because I'm going through every region of the world in alphabetical order, and there are just a lot of places in Afghanistan that start with B. BA actually. I'll link my Afghanistan playlist up there in the corner so that you guys can watch them all. But Bamyan is probably the most anticipated region of Afghanistan that I've covered because it's the place that the history nerds are the most fond of. And that would be because of this very famous site right here. You can see the Buddhas of Bamyan, which is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Let me pull that up for you to talk about this very interesting history, very tragic, but very important history, the cultural landscape and archaeological remains of the Bamyan Valley. It says, the cultural landscape and archaeological remains of the Bamyan Valley represent the artistic and religious developments from which the 1st to the 13th centuries characterized ancient Bactria, integrating various cultural influences into the Gandhara school of Buddhist art. The area contains numerous Buddhist monastic ensembles and sanctuaries, as well as fortified edifices from the Islamic period. The site is also testimony to the tragic destruction by the Taliban of the 2 standing Buddha statues, which shook the world in March 2001. This very tragic story about the Buddhas of Bamyan. You can see in this picture some of the incredible wall art that's in all of the caves. And here you can see a lot of the caves here carved into the side of the mountain here. And this is all that remains of the great Buddha of Bamyan, once the largest Buddha in the world. Right here, it was something like 150 something feet tall, which is like 50 something meters. View from the caves there, that's pretty neat. But this is a good picture here. Of course, we're going to look at it on Google Earth after the fact. But this is pretty much what this site looks like today. You can see all of these caves here, which we'll talk about in history. And here's where the Buddha once stood. And we'll talk all about his history in a minute. Probably one of the more famous UNESCO sites because it was designated a site after the largest, most important aspect of it was destroyed. But there is another interesting geographical feature here in Bamyan, and it's right here. This is the Amir National Park, which was established in 2009, right? And it was Afghanistan's first national park. There were no national parks in Afghanistan prior to the American coalition occupation and the government that was installed there. We'll talk more about that in history as well. It was an interesting time, the transitional period between the 2 major occupations of the Taliban, which is the second one still going on to this day. It's 2024 in September as I'm recording this for future reference. This area, though, of Afghanistan, you can see here, is known as Hazara Jat, I believe that's how you pronounce it. And that is the land of the Hazara people, who have their own customs, cultures. I think they speak Pashto. I didn't double check that. I'll leave a thing down there of what language they actually speak. I want to say Pashto. But I think really to this day they're still not really considered true like Afghani, even though they are citizens of Afghanistan if you live in Afghanistan. But you can be nationally a country but not ethnically, right? They're ethnically Hazara. And we'll talk about how they live here in Bamyan when we head to Google Earth. So let's get into this history. I'm like teasing it up for you guys. The earliest known peoples, I should rephrase that, the earliest peoples that we know of lived in this area about 3000 BC. And like it said before, this was part of some ancient kingdoms such as Bactria, which we talked about when we covered Bulk. There's also Ariana, and various powers occupied the area. Most notably, the Achaemenid Persians had control of the area here, which was later conquered by Alexander the Great as he marched through this area, conquering everything that he ran into, which after his death, not long after that, was replaced by the Seleucid Empire, led by one of his generals. But there were many powers that came and went in this area. This is just a very brief overview of history, right? We're not going to get into too much detail, so just the basics. It is rumored that in the year 261 BCE, the Emperor Ashoka of the Mauryan Empire, which is in present-day India, down there, sent some missionaries this way. Now, if you don't know the story of Ashoka, he was a very brutal emperor, general, led many battles, and after one particularly horrific one, he was going through the battlefield and saw all of these slaughtered people and changed his ways and became a devout Buddhist. Erected pillars all around the Indian subcontinent and sent Buddhism as far as he could to promote peace. So, allegedly, his missionaries came to Bamyan, bringing Buddhism with them. And it was definitely in its heyday, sometime around the 4th or 5th centuries or so, because that is when the Buddha statues were carved out of the mountainside. Of course, huge, as like I said, massive Buddhas. There were 2 very large ones on the outside. Allegedly, there were more deep inside the mountain because the Buddhists also carved all of those caves that you saw in that picture. And they decorated them with beautiful paintings. Buddhist paintings, of course. And what's interesting about that is they date from about the 5th to the 9th centuries, somewhere in there. But they painted them with oil. So they are considered the world's oldest oil paintings. Many of them are still around to this day. Some of them have seen some terrible times. Let's talk about that. The Arabs would have arrived in this area in the 7th century. It really would have picked up by the 11th century when the Ghaznavids controlled the area. And it was sometime around there that the very big Buddha was defaced. They chopped off his face because in Islam, of course the religion of the Ghaznavids, they don't believe in artwork that depicts human figures, especially reverent holy figures, and especially of the Prophet Muhammad. That is a huge no-no in like literally every branch of Islam, and there are many. That's just a universal thing across every branch of Islam, is you do not depict the Prophet as a human. Absolutely not, because God created him. God only creates perfection, and to create something like that is mocking God. That's how they see it, right? That's the root of what happened here at the Buddhas. It's good to understand that. So they chiseled off the Buddha's face. All that was left was his mouth. It's the only thing that survived. Of course, they were doing that for their religious beliefs, because you don't depict faces, especially holy faces, and it was not of their religion, so they didn't really show any, importance, any significance to that statue. So that is why. But that would pale in comparison to what would happen in this area in the year 1221. Genghis Khan's grandson allegedly had been killed in this area. Genghis Khan was furious. He came down with his Mongol army and destroyed everything in this region. Destroyed. Everyone there gone. All the buildings flattened. Destroyed everything. There are some ruins that I'll show you in this valley here. That's all that's left of what Genghis Khan did to this area, completely razed it. And the area has never recovered from that attack. It never bounced back to its former glory. It's still, obviously, it's still around. There's still people here, but not nearly like what it once was. So it, for a long time, was essentially just tiny villages, people living off the land, subsistence farming, you know, in tiny family clusters, little towns. No big, large cities or worship centers, no great art happening. For a while, the area was conquered by the Mughal Empire. In the year 1709, they claimed this area, which is an Indian empire. And I bring that up because the last ruler, right? Aurangzeb, right? Aurangzeb was the last of the Mughal Empire. Yeah, surely. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure that's right. Aurangzeb, he was a devout Muslim, like strict Muslim. Let me put it that way. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying it was his way or the highway, if you know what I mean. And I only mention him because allegedly he fired cannons at the Buddhas here, which I think we'll look at some old photographs on Google Earth of what that Buddha looked like in the 20th century. But his legs were all blown up, and as allegedly from Aurangzeb, who fired cannons at it. But probably this area didn't gain any prominence until the reign of Shah Durrani, who's considered the father of Afghanistan. United all of the different peoples, villages, what have you, in this area, made it one country of Afghanistan. It was during that time that the valley here saw some fighting during the First Anglo-Afghan War, part of the Great Game, when Russia and Great Britain were vying for control of this area. And it would see some conflict again at the end stages of the Great Game in the 1980s when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. There was a lot of resistance movement there. And as I say in every video about Afghanistan, but it's incredibly important to the country's history, when the Soviet Union invaded, many people rose up to fight against them, naturally. They are called the Mujahideen, rebel fighters. And they remained in power, essentially, after the Soviets pulled out. And one of those Mujahideen groups, called the Taliban, seized control of the entirety, almost the entirety, like 95% of Afghanistan. And they believed also in very strict Islam, a strict interpretation of Islam. Still do today. And naturally, they did not believe in statues depicting faces like these Buddhas were. And they took great offense to depictions of Buddha in general because they believe that really all of history before the Prophet, before Islam, was meaningless and just like a murky, unimportant time that did not matter. So they told the world, hey, we're going to get rid of these Buddhas. Pretty much the entire international community that was involved in their preservation, like archaeologists, historians, what have you, widely protested. But the Taliban did it anyway, and they blew up the Buddha statues. I believe it was March 2001. They are no longer. Just devastating because you know how old those statues were. and they weren't in good shape to begin with, but they don't even exist now. It was only a couple months later, I believe October 2001, that the United States led a coalition against the Taliban for harboring a word that I can't say on YouTube, very bad people. And they removed the Taliban from power and began to implement a more democratic government. One of those was to elect governors of each region of Afghanistan. And Bamyan, I believe it was Bamyan, they elected a woman governor, which is extremely progressive in Afghanistan because under the Taliban, women essentially have no rights whatsoever. This is when they established the national park, and it's when extensive archaeological research was done here, the site of the Buddhas in the village of Bamyan. They discovered more tunnels with more paintings that had never been damaged. I should mention in the past, 100 years or so, people started moving into the caves and using them as homes. So a lot of their cooking fires, the smoke and tar damaged the paintings in there. A lot were just defaced in general by Islamic militants. But many other paintings have been found. I think I read they found another Buddha statue because there was a Chinese text from the 9th century, I want to say. I think it was Tang Dynasty. That an explorer or something had come down here and had documented them. But it was over in China, right? So they were going off of those notes that person had made and found another Buddha statue. But I haven't seen any pictures of it. So I just read that somewhere. It could be wrong, but probably not. I don't know. And there was a plan to try to restore the Buddhas as much as they could. But I don't think anything went underway because the Taliban would rise up in power as soon as the American/coalition military pulled out of Afghanistan in 2001. The Taliban were just waiting for their moment, and they definitely seized it, and they gained control of Afghanistan. Now 99% of Afghanistan. Still some remote areas that they don't really have any power in, but they definitely have power here. And this time around, the Taliban are really trying to change their image on the international scene. They're seen as oppressing women, oppressing the rights of the civilians here, very brutal executions for very petty crimes. Pretty much any horrible, oppressive thing you can imagine, they're accused of doing. So this time around, the Taliban wants to be recognized as a legitimate government, so they're really trying to jump through hoops to be recognized as that. Unsuccessfully, I should say, but they really are trying. They're saying things like, oh, women go to school here. We allow women to go to school, but in truth, girls are allowed to attend a homeschool coalition up until 8th grade, and they're only really taught reading and sewing, things like that. But one of the things they're really trying to push is tourism. Afghanistan is currently open to many tourists. It's likely you watching this now could get a visa approved to visit Afghanistan. They are welcoming in as many tourists as possible, which is a little dubious, but if you ever wanted to go to Afghanistan, now's probably the easiest time to do so. Is it the best time? Probably not. Is it the easiest time? Absolutely. Which is saying something. And one of their little tourist gimmicks are tours of the Buddhas of Bamyan, or what's left of them. They heavily advertise tourism packages here. You can day tour, climb all over the caves. You can explore it as much as you want. You pretty much have free reign as long as you're not hopping any fences or gates. And obviously there are Taliban soldiers watching your every move, making sure that you're not going crazy in there. I don't know, but they pretty much, with the ticket, they'll just let you roam around here and do whatever you want. So they heavily advertise the Bamyan Buddhas, like, come to Afghanistan, good food, welcoming culture, see what's left of the Bamyan Buddhas that we destroyed. They've never apologized, but they're certainly capitalizing off of it, which feels very nefarious, doesn't it? You're responsible for damaging this, and now you're selling tickets to what's left. I don't know how I feel about that. But on the other hand, if I had a chance to come here, I absolutely would. I, of course, would need a male relative or a husband to go with me because I am not allowed in Afghanistan on my own. It's one of their rules for tourists. But I feel like this is a place I have to go someday. Afghanistan in general, because you guys know I love the geography here. I love the culture. I love how diverse and incredible it is. I love Afghanistan. I've mentioned that many times. And I'd absolutely love to see this place. Will it happen anytime soon? I highly doubt it. It'll take many, many decades and lots of change to happen before I'll get to see this place, which is unfortunate. But that is where we are today. And with that being said, why don't we just head over to Google Earth and explore this beautiful area for ourselves. Here we are in Bamyan province. Let's start by zooming out so you can see exactly where we are in the world. If you're not sure where Afghanistan is located, I feel like I was talking about this with my brother-in-law. He was like, isn't Afghanistan just desert? And no, it's not. Not at all. I feel like because the invasions of Afghanistan and Iraq were so back-to-back here in America, and the news showed a lot of images of Iraq, which is, that area at least, mostly desert. I feel like a lot of people feel like Afghanistan is also mostly desert. Oh boy, it is not. Not at all. You can see the Himalaya mountains here, forming the Hindu Kush range, which covers most of eastern Afghanistan here. You can see India down here, Pakistan, Iran, all the other Stan countries up here. China's just a hop, skip, and a jump away. Here's Bamyan, so you can see just how mountainous this region is, right? The Hindu Kush Mountains. And let's start off in the national park here. Wait for it to pop up. There it is. Yeah. The Amir National Park. These pictures are absolutely gorgeous. Not a desert at all. It may feel very rocky here. It looks a little sandy, but it's definitely not all desert. Look, you can rent little swan paddle boats here. And look at this. Look how much snow there is. They actually have a skiing competition in Bamyan every year. That's how not deserty it is. Beautiful waterfalls, all the rivers in this area. It is a stunning place. There's the entrance. Very fancy. Beautiful cliffs. Look at that waterfall. Incredible. I want to like sit right here and the water's probably freezing cold. Mountain water, right? Gushing down the mountains. Beautiful area. He's enjoying it. He's enjoying it. Look at that color. Amazing. And look how snowy it got. I think this is the waterfall. They're all frozen over in the winter. A beautiful region. I think there's another slideshow. Will that one pop up for me? I don't know. I guess not. But that's okay, because I like that one more anyway. The other one shows a more varied landscape, but I think that slideshow is prettier. So let's head down to the valleys. Oh, this is fun. Look at the 3D. Look how mountainous this region is. There's not a flat place anywhere, is there? There's all valleys and beautiful, beautiful mountains here. But, of course, we're going to head to what we all want to see. We're going to look at what's left of the Buddhas. that's not it. That looks like it's up here. Bamyan. Close. Before we do that, right here, I wonder if the slideshow's going to pop up. I think I have it tagged up here, so we can just, boom. Not that one, this one. Golgola City. It's nicknamed the City of Sighs. This was what Genghis Khan destroyed. This was once a thriving city. And this is all that's left of it. So I wonder if, I believe so, that a lot of the archaeological sites here of what Genghis Khan destroyed were uncovered during the coalition occupation period, right? They're all enjoying it. Seeing these ruins. What was once a big thriving city. I'll show you another site in a minute. But isn't that something that's on this big hillside? What was once a huge thriving city is now pretty much rocks and rubble thanks to Genghis Khan. Down here's the actual village, and you can see how beautifully green it is, little patchworks of farms. But over here are the Buddhas. Doesn't look that great in 3D, so I'll just show you. So you can see the people here, and this is how big that Buddha once stood. So I'm pretty sure it's in this slideshow. Look at all the caves. We're going to see a picture of what this Buddha once looked like. I think, yep, here it is. So you can see that his arms and chunks of his legs are missing, and that's allegedly from Aurangzeb firing at it. The little holes you see were apparently put in to keep it stable. And if you can see, all you can see is his mouth. The rest of his face was, I guess, just scratched off, removed. He's been through a lot, had been through a lot. He's no more. Before and after, they completely blew the whole thing up. Devastating, right? You can see lots of details here in the robes. It's not a typical Buddha, right? Because usually Buddhas are seated, and he's standing up. He was standing up. But it was apparently a particular Buddhist art style that there is not a lot of evidence left of. So what we have here is, oh goodness, there's a picture of it getting blown up. Oh, how sad is that? What we have left is precious, isn't it? The interior here. And again, people have been living in these caves. I believe they still are living in these caves. There's another picture of the old Buddha. Looks like a Black Hawk helicopter. Not sure. Pieces preserved there. I believe people still live in the caves. Just they've been doing so for generations. It's almost eerie. But he is no more, sadly. Very devastating. What a loss to world culture, isn't it? But we are thankful for what we have. And yeah, allegedly, from what I can tell, you're allowed to just come and crawl all over the place. You can, as long as there isn't a fence telling you no, you're allowed to play all over the scaffolding here. Which I wonder if this is, this is alleged. I haven't found any evidence of this. I wonder if this is what's left of the rubble from it being blown up. And I wonder if the scaffolding was added later to try to begin restoration, and it was never completed because of the Taliban takeover. Or maybe it was just added to keep the cave steady because they had a large explosion in there, making sure that everything stays stable. You can see these huge cracks are also from the explosion, the Buddha. It's so picturesque, isn't it? It's still a beautiful sight. It's just tragic now. Look at the barbed wire. They really don't want you hopping over to that day. It's beautiful in its tragedy. I'll show you one more sight before we say goodnight. It is over. You have to follow the river down to this point. Let me see. It's easy to see from above. Nope, it's over here somewhere. I think it's right here. Oh, that actually helps. Another ancient city that Genghis Khan destroyed. And there's still some evidence of it to follow this river along the cliffside. Another spot that I found very easily on my own, and now, of course, once I'm recording, I can't find it at all. Let's see, I have it tagged too. Oh no, I was way off. I thought it was closer than that. It's not at all. So it looks like a really big cliff here, where this river forks off here. Once you look close, you can see ruins of an ancient site. This was another fortified town up there, nice and safe with a big lookout, right? This was not destroyed by Genghis Khan. This was destroyed by the Persians, I believe. You can see a big watchtower here. This was not Genghis Khan. I won't give him responsibility for this. This was much later. But you can see all that's left of this town here, this big fortified town. So much destruction in this area, but there's still something so beautiful about it. It's still just an absolutely gorgeous little corner of the world, but I feel that's true of all of Afghanistan. It's just a beautiful country, beautiful countryside, and very kind people. As long as you don't disagree with the Taliban, I suppose. Let me see what this is real quick. I didn't see that pop up before. Oh, that's why, because there's no pictures. That's too bad. That's true of a lot of areas over here. Lots of things tagged and nothing comes up. So we will end this with one more Buddha slideshow. Let's see. We looked at these two. Surely there's more. All these places are tagged with all kinds of things. My cat is doing something. I don't know what he's doing. Let's look down here. There's a shop. Let's look at this. Actually, you know what we're going to do? If we could just go to the provinces slideshow, we can see some of the pictures of that other park. Oh, there's the other park area. But never mind. Come on. That's not it. What is happening? We're just going to end it here before I get more lost. Look at some more beautiful pictures. So thank you so much for watching. Wow, look at this. You can see the people there. If you learned something new today, give this video a thumbs up. Let me know what it was down in the comments. Let me know what you think about the Buddhas of Bamyan site. Let me know your feelings about it, because I know a lot of you have feelings about it. And if you enjoyed this style of content, please consider subscribing. This is an ongoing series on my channel. And next we're actually going to be covering 4 capital cities, I think in a row. I'm trying to see my calendar, but I'm in the dark. Yeah, because it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday. 4 capital cities in a row. Next, these are the peaches, apricots. Looks good. Next, we're actually going to the capital of Somalia, which, if you know your world capitals, you know that's Mogadishu. But ASMR Geographica. Aren't we in the BAs right now? We're going in alphabetical order of every region in the world. Why are we going to Mogadishu? Well, you'll just have to subscribe so you won't miss out, and you'll learn why. So I hope that you found this video relaxing and educational. I know it was a little heavy, especially if you're a archaeology history nerd. It's a tough subject, Bamyan, but I do hope that you found it relaxing and educational. And I hope that you have a good night.